So recently I photoshopped Dwight Schrute from The Office into the poster for the movie Us. I honestly don't even know why I did this, I just thought it would be kind of funny. So in this video I'm going to show you guys the entire creation process on how I created this poster. This is a speed art video and I'm going to be talking over it, explaining like all the things I did and what I was thinking when I was doing them, so hopefully you guys can take something away from what I did and apply it to your own work. If you guys like videos like this, consider subscribing because I post stuff like this all the time, and let's get right into the video. Alright, so first thing I did was drop the original Us poster into Photoshop and started selecting all of the white of the artwork. I actually only did this because I wanted the Us logo, and that was kind of the easiest way to do that. So once I deleted or got rid of all the white that I don't need, like the title and stuff, I dropped another picture of Dwight Schrute in there. His facial expression didn't really match what I wanted, like it wasn't really serious enough for the artwork, so I actually put in another picture of his face where he's much more serious, and then I actually had to put his face onto his own body. I did have to completely erase his original face because I don't want like two necks popping out really. So once I got his face in there, then I started kind of putting the image together, making it look like his head really belongs on that body. Since the image that I used of his head was kind of cut off at the top, I actually had to use a brush and kind of fade the sides of where it was cut off, so it kind of looks like his head just kind of naturally, or his hair just naturally ends at the top there. It wasn't like cut off from the picture. Then I matched his head with the body, and I matched like the levels and the hue and the colors and everything like that. And once I had the entire Dwight Schrute body all together and matched up, I actually matched him with the image in the poster, so I could match him as much as I could to the original Us poster, and that includes like the levels, the saturation, and the colors. In the original Us poster, the girl's kind of like coming out of the darkness, and I wanted to replicate the same thing in this poster, so I kind of had to use the brush tool and draw on some darkness on his shoulders, so it's like he's kind of emerging from the darkness. After that, I actually started manually using the brush tool. I started manually drawing in all of these other shadows. If you compare the suit of Dwight Schrute and the girl in the Us poster, they look very different, because in the Us poster, there's like a light kind of shining directly onto the girl. So I kind of had to imagine that Dwight Schrute was in a similar situation where a light was shining right on him, and I had to manually draw in all these shadows. To pick where I wanted, I kind of accented or made the existing shadows more dramatic, but I also kind of had to just use my imagination and think like, if there was a light actually shining right on him, what would cast a shadow? So like on his tie, on the pockets of his jacket, and the wrinkles on his jacket. Then I also went onto the face. I added like shadows all around his head, around his chin, even those like pieces of hair that's hanging in front of his head. I also added a shadow to that. And I added some shadows on the side of his face and under his eyes, just to make him look kind of more menacing and creepy, because it is kind of like a horror movie poster. So in the movie, one of the most popular episodes of The Office, in that episode, Dwight actually cuts the face off of a training dummy and uses it to kind of reference the movie. I think it's called Silence of the Lambs. So I thought a lot of people would recognize if I kind of made this a version of that episode, and instead of the girl holding like a face of her own, it's actually him holding the mannequin face in front of them. This way I can replicate the poster as much as possible, but I can also replicate the poster as much as possible, but also kind of create something that everyone kind of understands and thinks is funny. When I cut the poster out, it kind of looked like I just, cut a 2D image out of another 2D image. So I did have to use some layer styles and some filters to kind of add a shine and add some thickness to the mask. So it looks like this plastic is actually like, I don't know, like a centimeter or a couple millimeters thick. once I had it in the scene and kind of looking realistic, I had to match the saturation levels and colors of the mask with Dwight, and then I also had to add shadows from the mask onto Dwight, because remember, I'm imagining there's like a light shining right in front of him directly onto him, so I want to make it look as realistic as possible. After that, I wanted to add something kind of funny to the top, something maybe like a quote that Dwight says that kind of sounds creepy, like it could be like in some kind of like horror, like funny horror movie. So I wrote, "I don't think it was very realistic in the movie. Turns out it was very realistic." I don't know, I just thought that was kind of funny. I thought it could be creepy, like in this context. I don't know, I think it works. I think this one works for sure. So the last piece of the puzzle I needed with this is to add Dwight's hand to the artwork. And this was definitely by far the hardest part, because the image that I took of Dwight, his hand is in the perfect position, but the problem is I actually took this image from a screenshot of the actual show. So the image quality is far lower than the rest of the image, which is a big problem, and it causes a ton of other problems that I have to deal with. Like you can see here, I'm like deleting or like painting out the blue color of that, like, what is that, like a hacky sack or something. I had a bunch of problems like that, but the main problem was the level of detail. And to bring back that level of detail, I had to use a bunch of filters, and I actually, mostly filters. Another small detail I had to change with this is that the color of his suit in that screenshot is actually black, so I just had to use the hue and saturation to kind of match the brown of his suit in the background with the new sleeve. I did a little bit of blending to make it look like his sleeve is actually a part of it. Something else I did to add more detail was to manually draw in with the brush tool a bunch of shadows, like between his fingers and like on the veins of his hand and his knuckles. At this point, I'm honestly doing everything I can to make this piece seem as detailed as possible, because it is just so low res that I really have to bring out every single trick in the book to make sure it looks similar. I don't care too much about how realistic the blending at the bottom looks, because I always intended to kind of add a vignette around the whole piece, which would kind of like fade or add darkness onto that area. So how detailed it was didn't really make that much of a difference. At this point in the artwork, I'm actually just kind of going through everything and touching everything up, making sure the mask looks kind of thick, making sure all the shadows make sense and they are kind of dark. And once I finished that, I brought it into Camera Raw Filter, and that's when I started making it look legitimately like a horror poster. So I changed the overall coloring to be kind of more blue and dark and spooky. I made the levels way darker. Overall, I feel like this is when the piece really came together and really started looking like a horror movie. Obviously, I had to go back to the hand because it was bothering me so much. And you can kind of see the piece coming together. I just kind of, at this point, was just touching up small little details, making sure everything is perfect. On the sleeve, the top of the sleeve kind of gave me trouble because the lighting in the image that I took a screenshot of was also different to this. Often when I'm creating artwork, I'll kind of go through the entire piece, get all the pieces that I need into the composition, and then go back and kind of fool around with all the things that I kind of thought were not perfect enough. So at this point, I'm just kind of touching things up. So I think I'm just gonna stop talking and let the rest of this play out, and you can see kind of the final product. that's it. That's the video. So if you guys have questions about anything I did throughout this entire process, then let me know in the comment and I'll answer every single one. Also consider subscribing. I post stuff like this every single Wednesday. See ya.